So thanks for joining me today. My name is Dave Sobel. I'm with Proven Resource, and I'm an attorney here in Metro Detroit. We deal with real estate issues, business issues, finance issues, and asset planning issues. And today at Proven Resource Radio, we have Rob Syfert, who is the owner and founder of USA Portfolio Real Estate. And Rob, thanks for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, David.
Rob, the reason I asked you to join us today is because you have created such a successful business model for real estate investment and advisory services and property management services. And so I just wanted to, hopefully pick your brain a little bit and have our listeners learn a little bit from you, from your, really vast experience in managing properties. My understanding is that you built a practice from nothing when it comes to real estate, and you also have been in the real estate, not just the real estate, but the investment side, securities investment. So you went from securities investment to real estate investment.
Yes.
So how did you build or develop USA Portfolio?
I've been in real estate my whole life in one way or another, and then used those network of relationships to meet the need of what investors were looking for.
Okay.
Being from an investment background myself,
all right,
I started realizing, money's leaving the stock market and going over to real estate. So why not help fill that void and use my talents where they could be used the best?
And you started really ground level. I mean, you started with no properties to manage or very few properties to manage. Now you have quite a few that you manage, right?
I started with zero and actively got with some investors who wanted them and started, doing 5 or 10 properties a month for investors and grew that to 30 plus a month, and then
and it just keeps growing.
It keeps growing, and now I actively manage over 400 rental properties for investors, and that continues to grow on a daily basis.
Wow.
At this point.
So, what is your first of all? What's the area that most of these properties that you manage, and then you deal with? And are you an expert in, let's say, Detroit metro area or the city of Detroit? I mean, certain people have preferences. So what area do you like to work in?
I am primarily focused on the Metro Detroit area, so the Tri-County area is my prime. I would say 98% of our portfolio is in the Metro Detroit Tri-County area of Oakland, Macomb, and Wayne. And I would say we're one of the top companies and definitely one of the best performing.
For real estate investors?
Yes.
Are they mostly private real estate investors, or are you dealing with, does a bank call you up, let's say, sometimes and say, hey, we have some real estate that we need managed or we need fixed and sold? Because I know you do a lot of sales transactions as well, right?
Yes. I built my business first from doing sales transactions, but it's been for the direct investors, so those who have their IRA money and they're using it to, buy rental properties for the return on investment they bring, or individuals with just cash laying around, and again, looking for a better investment than the stock market or your local bank CD at the great rates they're paying.
But how's it work now? I mean, I my background, of course, is real estate and finance, and I've endeavored in quite a few deals. But when it comes to the stock market's been going crazy. So a lot of people, except for like this past couple of weeks, but a lot of people have put their money back into the stock market. And you have a great background in that as well, I know, because you were an investment advisor.
Yes.
But real estate, obviously, is it obvious? I don't know, but there's still a lot of money going into real estate, right?
Oh,
what is
absolutely.
it that real estate gives that, let's say, the stock market doesn't give?
I think the advantage that investors like is the tangible asset, that they could put their hands on it. They can come and see it if they want to. They can ask and see how their portfolio is performing, rather than, the market goes down today, you've just lost money. Or the market goes up today and you've just made money. I think there's a lot of people that are tired of riding the roller coaster and feel that real estate, primarily rental properties, are going to give them a more consistent return. Year after year.
So consistency is what people are looking for.
Yeah.
But it's not easy to manage a property, right? I know it isn't. And you're doing it for a number of people.
Yes, there's definitely a lot that goes into it. a lot more than people probably anticipate, and we help investors that call us all the time and say, look, I have 5 or 10 properties and I cannot do this. Can you please take over and take these toilet phone calls in the middle of the night?
Is that what you call them, toilet phone calls?
All the random things that they can't handle.
Can I use that as a title for perhaps this podcast?
I think so.
That's actually a good one, toilet phone calls. I'll remember that. And now you're originally from, we've been friends for quite a while, but you're originally from Ohio, right?
No.
Where are you from?
I lived in Ohio for a little bit, but I'm actually grew up in Harrison Township in St. Clair Shores area.
Right, so you're familiar with the metro area. But don't you do Ohio properties too?
I do not currently.
Oh, okay. You were doing them, though, for a while,
for a very short time, but not actively doing anything in Ohio now.
What's for me, I learned and came up into this business since 1989, and one of the things that I learned, sometimes the hard way, is that it's not advisable if you're a real estate investor to set down your investments in multiple locations that are, let's say, a half hour to an hour away from each other. It makes it very difficult to manage. But when you're a property manager, and I know that's not your main business, that's not, but it comes with the territory, and a lot of people don't have that. There's like a German word, I think it's called Quech. They don't have the strength to do what you do. There's an emotional strength to deal with tenants, to deal with fixing up properties or repairing properties. That takes a special type of person. So your company, part of what they do is manage these properties throughout the whole metro area. Is that difficult for you, or?
Well, and you alluded to the exact thing and why we specifically focus on the Tri-County area.
Okay.
We've been asked to handle homes for clients of ours that have properties outside of that in Lansing or Port Huron, and our exact answer is what you just alluded to. We don't want to manage those because we're not going to be effective management for you. It's outside of our scope of area where we have all of the vendors that we need, all of the appropriate people that can get there in a timely manner, and we don't feel that we would be the best suited in those areas outside of our circle. But in our circle, yes, we can. We have teams on the road and can get to anything within that Tri-County area rather quickly.
And it's hard, so that's a good lesson right there, right up front. It's, if you're an investor in real estate, you want to make sure that you're picking a kind of an area that you're going to specialize in. I'm not talking about, I'm in the specialty of real estate, but the location. So let's say you buy a home in Beverly Hills, Michigan that you want to rent out. You're going to want to make sure that your other homes are somewhere close to that house in Beverly Hills, let's say Southfield or Birmingham. You want to kind of be in the same general vicinity. You would agree with that, right?
Absolutely.
So that's a good lesson for people who want to get into real estate. That's number one lesson, right?
Great lesson I learned from a good friend of mine who managed 100 properties looking backwards. His biggest mistake was buying properties anywhere they came from.
Right.
And now he has to manage them.
Right. It's not easy.
He's getting rid of the ones that are an hour away from everything else.
Right.
And focusing on at least the 80% that are within a 30-minute window, let's say.
And there's reasons for it. Like I'll tell you just, my experience in the lending business. One time the savings and loans used to only lend in their own, what they called their own backyard, because they could see the properties on a regular basis. They knew the locations, they knew the area. They also knew the type of people, let's say, that lived in that location or that area. So it made things easier for them when it came to either, just collecting a mortgage payment or taking back a property, unfortunately, and managing the property. But you're right. If you're a lender or a real estate investor and you have to go, let's say, from Metro Detroit all the way to Grand Rapids, and you only have one home or two homes, what happens? You have to get your own contractors, right?
Right.
It becomes hard.
You need your own contractors, your own home inspectors, your own 24-hour maintenance service. You're going to need to become familiar with that court process in case there's eviction needed. You're going to need to know the city rules as far as the standards of qualifying a rental property there.
Right.
Where we stay at, we focus on because we know all of that.
Right. It's like the economies of scale.
Yes.
You can focus in on what you're really good at in a location. So that's one challenge. What's another challenge? What is another thing that real estate investors who hire you to either manage or advise? I know you do a lot of advisory work. What is another thing that, what's common when they're calling you? Let's say, what's a difficulty that they're having?
A lot of it is still related to the same thing. It's getting the eyes on the property, knowing what's physically going on, and being able to communicate effectively with their tenants, and making sure they're using the right processes to put the right people in their home.
Okay.
And the other bigger thing is on the contracting that you talked about. It is knowing that you have the contractors that are going to do a quality job. I talked to a lot who have said, hey, we spent $15,000 on our home, so we know it's great.
Right.
We go and evaluate it and say, well, I don't know what they told you or what they charged you for,
right.
but this is not great.
Right. So having your own contractors, your own vendors.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah, and we do a very thorough vetting process for all of that to ensure the quality of standard that we upkeep with our companies.
Right. I mean, and it's really actually a lot of people have also found it difficult to actually find good contractors, because after the let's call it the real estate implosion, or whatever you want to call it, the Great Recession, a lot of contractors who were working and living here in Michigan left Michigan,
yes.
and they went elsewhere. So those people that remained, I'm sure there's many qualified contractors, but they're fewer and further between. I mean, you have to compete with home builders now who are building subdivisions. They're these contractors are in huge demand.
They absolutely are, and that's part of the problem for an individual investor to be able to find the right resources. And obviously I have the right ones from going through that experience myself and growing my business and being burned by contractors that weren't so great.
Right.
So working with someone like myself just helps eliminate all of that for you. It takes all of that concern out, and knowing that you don't have to go search for all these different aspects involved in managing your property. You can talk to somebody who's a done-for-you service, and will hold your hand and get it done. And
that also, and that's so important, and that also relates to not only contractors, but vendors in general, such as a realtor. So let's say you have to sell the investor's property. Well, it's better to work with a realtor who knows the area, because what happens is, let's go back to that Grand Rapids analogy. If you got one property out in Grand Rapids that you got to sell, you may be dealing with a realtor you've never worked with before in the past, and you may not like that realtor by the time the transaction's over.
Absolutely.
Or you feel that you didn't get the right deal. Whereas, let's say if you have a concentrated area that you're working in, you have one or two reliable realtors, right?
Absolutely. And we're a brokerage ourselves. If our investors wish to sell their property, it's something that we can help them with. And the great thing about it is what you just said. Not only do I know the realtors because they're associated with us, but we're also already have intimate knowledge of your property and all things with it. So we're probably the best ability of selling your property for you.
That makes sense. I mean, when you deal with tenants, I love it. Toilet phone calls. I don't know what I call them, but I think toilet phone calls is actually a nicer title than what I would probably give it. But what are the when it comes to, let's say, qualifying a tenant, that's a big issue. I mean, you're letting people into your home. What is it that you're looking for? What are the flags that you look at, the red flags? The
immediate red flags that we're looking for are previous evictions in a recent time frame. Another major thing to look for are collections currently on their credit report for utilities, which just tells you a track record of not paying things associated with the home.
Right.
In addition to that, another qualifying factor is income. Making sure they actually have verifiable income, at least 3 times or more of whatever the rent is you're looking to collect.
Okay.
Those, I would say, are the biggest 3 major things. Everything else, we check some other things as well, but those are the 3 major. It's interesting. The 3 times their rental income, their rental payment, that's really important. Having 3 times the income. Yes. I used to say, and being in the business for a while, I'm not a great landlord. I have no patience for it, and that's why you and I get along so well, because you're very patient with these types of people. But there's great tenants out there. Some people are so lucky; they'll have a tenant who's been there making the payment. I have clients who have tenants that have been in their properties for years. 5 years, 10 years. It's wonderful. But one of my investors told me a great
I would think, a great qualifier as to how they know that they may have a good tenant. If an applicant comes to the house, to inspect the property, and they want to live in his property, he always, when he takes the application, he goes and he drives by their current residence where they're currently living.
Absolutely.
And he can see. Now, he does say there are some landlords that don't take care of their properties, so he doesn't fault the tenant. But he can tell that when he drives by a property and there's garbage strewn out all over the place, there's cars perhaps that are parked on the lawn. I mean, there's a myriad of variables that we can discuss what makes a good tenant, what makes a bad tenant. But how they live, if it's evident externally that there's problems, you can bet your bottom dollar going in the house it's going to be worse.
Absolutely.
And he qualifies people that way. It's one of his qualifications.
It's a part of our process as well. If they're coming from another rental property, we do our best to schedule a visit to that property as well for the exact same reason. Because you're right. It's a telltale sign of, well, they can say a lot, they can look good on paper. This is how they're currently living in that home.
Do you ever take a verification of rent from a private?
Oh yeah. If they have a previous landlord, we do everything that we possibly can to vet this client before moving him into our property, because we know, generally speaking, we have the best house on the block, and we want to keep it that way.
Okay, but the problem I have is that, or I had, initially I'd say, I'll take a verification of rent, meaning that the former landlord would give you a statement saying, oh, Mrs. Smith pays on time. And then I quickly learned that sometimes Mrs. Smith isn't the greatest tenant, and they want them out as badly as possible, so they'll write down whatever they have to.
Yes.
So you would agree on something like that. Then, maybe copies of bank statements or receipts, such as money order receipts or canceled checks.
Yes, we ask for all verifiable proof. Anything that we can prove is more helpful.
Right.
Rather than just the letter, because you're right. It could be a situation of that landlord wanting to get rid of that tenant from their property. And we do our best to not take on those tenants, but of course, it's a business that can happen.
What is your, in the past, let's say 90 days, what's your most recent challenge that really kind of put your all your metal, like all your experience to task? What one incident could you talk about without disclosing anybody's name that maybe our listeners can learn from? It could be in the sale of real estate, or it could be in the rental of a piece of real estate, or the acquisition of a piece of real estate.
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing recently is making sure that you've done your due diligence in the area that you're going to acquire a property on, and what's going to be acquired, or what's going to be required by that city.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is, I currently have a property that's testing every part of me.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No, that's okay.
But these are great learning experiences.
It is a property that now, for the city to certify it in the new owner's name, want us to move the electrical panel and all the wiring to the home in a different location than where it currently is, and it's never been asked of any previous property owner. So
why? Do you know why? Or
no, just a city saying you're a new owner. So whatever was there before doesn't matter anymore.
That is,
it's now your problem to deal with.
It does have to be reasonable, though. I mean, when you deal with the city and they have city certs and inspections, they have to be reasonable. I mean,
yes, we're working the issue out.
Right. I mean, I had one where years ago in the city of Detroit, in a location called University District, which is a nice area.
Yes.
There's a lot of nice areas of Detroit. For those people who are outside Detroit who think there's no good areas in Detroit, there are beautiful areas in Detroit. And in this one area, the house had a pea gravel driveway. And it was a beautiful home with this pea gravel driveway. And when we took over the property, I represented the investor, actually. Wasn't a property that I owned. But the city came in and they said, no more pea gravel. You have to pour a concrete driveway. But the problem was, this was a circular driveway, not just a straight driveway. And it kind of was a little winding. So you can only anticipate a circular driveway is how much the cost to pour a concrete driveway.
Absolutely.
It's just, it was crazy, and I learned a lesson, really, unfortunately, at the expense of the investor, but still learned a lesson that when you go to purchase a new property or, invest in a property, you had better find out what the city is going to require before there's a transfer of title or before, within so many days after you take possession of that property. So
Yes.
that's a biggie.
It is. It's definitely, it's one of the biggest ones,
Yeah.
making sure you've done your thorough homework before
Right.
closing on a property.
Right, due diligence is so important. And, due diligence is such a broad term.
Yes.
And just in my own experience representing people, the most recent one I have, if you don't mind me sharing, is I have somebody who is buying a house and they have lake access, or they were told that they have lake access to a property that doesn't sit next to the house that they're purchasing. So it's an additional lot. And then we come to find out that not only do they have lake access on this lot, it's kind of an easement they call it, but half the community has that access and the other half doesn't. Yet there's only one boat dock and there's only places for 3 boats. But the realtor had conveyed to the client, no, you can put your boat there, it's lake access. Well, the truth is, if there's only one boat dock that can only handle 3 boats, and there's, let's say, 25 people who have, who live in the community, you're on a long waiting list.
Yes.
So that is not accurate. And then we found out a little bit more, which is that the lot or the lake access did not have any rules or regulations. So it was kind of a free-for-all. And I told my client, you had better figure out, get with these other, easement owners as to how you want, some type of rules and regulations as to how you access this lot. And it's still going on, but the point is you should really do your due diligence because these people were paying for that access within the purchase price of the house,
Yeah.
So it's a big deal.
Yeah, I
So-
agree. That's it goes in line with a great statement of, they can tell you anything to sell you a property,
Oh, yeah, definitely.
but definitely make sure that's something that's in writing and that you can verify.
Do you ever do any work on your own? Like any manual, like, I'm sure in the beginning when you were doing stuff, did you like, fish out, tampons and toilets and all that other good stuff? Those are the toilet phone calls, right?
Yeah, I haven't personally done those, but I have. I've been involved in some of the rehabs and done
Yeah.
some of the labor work and
Yeah.
more intimate properties for family
Sure.
and things like that.
Yeah. I mean, because a lot of landlords who, let's say, own 5 to 10 homes, they will tell you that it's best to, if you haven't learned how to do certain things, as a contractor, in plumbing or electrical, you do learn fast.
Oh yeah.
Did you learn? Is that how you kind of learned?
Oh yeah. You learn very quickly
So
what not to do.
Sorry to interrupt there, but what is an acceptable rate of return? Like, just for our listeners, what do you think an acceptable rate of return is? Let's say when people are renting their property, what is acceptable for them?
Well, there's definitely varying factors
Sure.
in that. It's going to depend on the area where the property is and the rental market in that area.
Huh.
I would say a good range of anticipation is going to be somewhere from a 7 to 8% return on your higher end properties and higher rental markets.
Right.
All the way up to the high teens.
Oh, really?
In a return when you get into an area. And again, going with Detroit. In
Right.
certain areas of Detroit, I would expect a very high return, and in some areas, I would go to the lower double digits because there are some very great areas in the
Sure.
city of Detroit itself.
And now, with Gilbertville, and he's
Yes.
doing a terrific job. That still hasn't flowed out to the surrounding communities, but it's starting to, right?
Yeah, a little bit. There's starting to be some street lights going up and other things, and I anticipate over the next 3 to 5 years that there's going to be a lot that's going to carry over into the actual single-family real estate market as well.
Right. There's so many people running in. I mean, I'm not going to say every day, but every week I get calls from real estate investors throughout the country. As recently as I think it was Phoenix, and they're going to drop a bunch of money in Detroit, and then they
Yep.
need to. Of course, they're lining themselves up. with they're real estate investors, and they're not buying one home, they're buying quite a few, so they're lining themselves up with an attorney, they're lining themselves up with a property guy like yourself,
Yep.
a real estate advisor. But it does take time, though, right? I mean, it's harder. Would you say it's harder to manage? I mean, we talked about it initially. It's harder to manage a property when you're really far away.
It is, and you need to make sure that the team that you're hiring actually knows what they're doing.
Right.
I would tell anyone that it's not a bad idea to come and physically visit, because I've seen a lot of investors that call us,
Right.
and unfortunately they're properties that we'll recommend they get rid of because they were sold something that isn't necessarily in a good area,
Right.
and probably is going to have a lot of difficulty and a lot of problems, and we've actually turned down properties just because they wouldn't be a good fit for us, and we don't recommend that the investor even keeps them.
Right. So if at some point, though, the rate of return is so great, like if you get a property for nothing,
Yep.
but there's always a price to, I mean, I've learned just representing people from out of state, there's still a price to be paid. You could have squatters in the home. You could have a structural issue with the property. Until you see it, until you
Yes.
inspect it, everything on paper looks great until you come and look at it, right?
Yeah, you could find out that not only do you have those legal issues with
Yeah.
the squatters,
Yeah.
you have your mechanicals and things being stripped from your property
Oh,
because
yeah.
it's sitting vacant.
Yeah.
Or you could come and do a visit and find out that your house looked great in photos and they did do
Yeah.
a high quality rehab, but the entire block is filled with burnt down homes
yeah.
and
See,
boarded up
that's-
properties.
Right.
And you're never going to get a renter. You're only going to have issues with that property.
So the 400 properties or plus that you represent, you've seen pretty much every one of those properties.
Yes, we have a process that we follow when taking over a property.
Yeah.
And there's certain things that we require the owners to allow us to do, inspecting the property, inspecting the area before we agree to manage that property. And then furthermore, we take that a step further. If the area is sound, the next thing is making sure that that property meets our rehab standards. So
Right.
just because you say it's a quality property doesn't mean we agree.
Right.
We want the best house on the block, and that's our standard. We know that will, doing a proper rehab up front is going to get rid of maintenance issues down the road, and it's also going to help keep a good quality tenant in your property because you have a great property for them to rent. Think of it as the property. There are a lot of landlords out here that will cut every corner possible thinking, well, I can move somebody in because it's clean. We disagree with that model.
Right.
We think of it as this should be a property you would want to move yourself or your family into.
Wow.
And if you wouldn't, then
Right.
then that's not a quality property that meets our standard.
Right. Well, and it makes sense. Also, it removes a lot of the headache for you
Yes.
down the road.
Yes, we know when you cut those corners,
Right.
like you just said, there's a price to pay.
Right.
Down the road, you're going to be going back repetitively to fix those issues that you didn't take care of up front,
Right.
and now you have a tenant in the way dealing with those
Sure.
issues.
And it actually gets, okay, so we're going to talk from a business standpoint, of course, and then a legal standpoint. The first thing that happens is when you don't do the repair. Now, it wasn't this way years ago, but now what happens is the tenant just doesn't make a payment.
Yes.
Says, I'm not paying you
Yeah.
until it's fixed. And you're right, that tenant is in the way. And then that tenant learns, just from my experience and also just from quite a few clients' experience, then the tenant learns, boy, this issue isn't taken care of. I'm not going to pay you on this. And then if you don't address it properly, the next thing is then they go and find another issue.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're not going to pay you for that. So now let's say you then take care of those issues. Every month, when they find that they can't make a payment, they're having a hard time, what do?
Come up with a new
They come
maintenance
up with
issue.
a new issue. Am I correct?
Oh, you're absolutely correct.
So it's very important. I think there's just in life, garbage in, garbage out,
Absolutely.
right? So if you put in garbage, you're going to get garbage.
Absolutely.
So
And I'd
So
like to say if you start with a garbage property,
Yeah.
you're more inclined to get a garbage tenant to go with it.
That's a good point too. So let me ask you, there's another side to this business too, and we're going to wrap it up shortly. But the other side that you have, besides advisory and selling property and leasing property and managing property, is you also have to market property, and you have to market yourself.
Absolutely.
So a lot of people who listen are not just real estate investors, but they don't realize that they're entrepreneurs. And that's one thing that you and I, we get along so well because we're both entrepreneurs. Even though I'm in the business of law and you're in the business of real estate, we still have to market ourselves. So tell me, recently you just did some new developments. Tell me about them.
Yes, we just started branding our website out and getting our name recognition out there more. And
What's your website?
it's USAproperties.com. USAPortfolioRE.com.
Okay.
And it's USA Portfolio Real Estate.
Right, which is the name of your company.
Yes,
right.
and encompasses the full brand of scope of what we do.
And what is it? I went on the site recently, and it's very attractive. But what about the site do you like best? What was it that you told the developer, hey, you can do A, B, and C, but make sure you do D? I definitely want that item on the website.
I wanted that website to be a great representation of who I am and what my company stands for.
Okay, so there's personality involved there too.
Yes.
It's not just a bunch of houses, which that's your business, but you're also putting your image up there and you're telling them what your experience is personally, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. And so when it comes to marketing, not only internet-wise, what else do you do for marketing?
I do direct mail. I've done probably everything that every real estate coach and training program out there will teach new people coming to the market.
Okay.
And I've learned what works and what doesn't. So as far as radio ads to bandit signs to direct mail to pre-foreclosures, you name it, I've done it.
You've done it.
And I know from tracking all that information what works and what doesn't, and I've scaled to specifically putting more focus into the areas that matter.
Right. So interesting. We're not going to get into your proprietary information. Don't get nervous. I'm not going to ask you about that. But I am going to say there are a couple of things that you said. The word track. Mm-hmm. Keeping good metrics, knowing the metrics, knowing your rate of return. Not only in your marketing, but we'll go right back and flip, excuse the pun, to your real estate.
Yep.
You know what your rate of return is based on the investment, how much money you put in, and what you're going to get out. It's the same thing with marketing. You have to know what works, and you got to keep doing the things that work, but you still got to test those things that don't work, right?
Oh, definitely.
Right. So being an entrepreneur in real estate involves more than just, I do property management. I flip homes. I advise real estate investors all over the country. I also have to market, and you also have to have a back room to monitor and maintain your business, right?
Yeah, there are
How
a
do you
lot
sleep
of.
at night?
I use the power of great systems.
That's really important.
And it is, and putting all the right systems in place to ensure that all of those little intricate pieces are happening, and then evaluate all the metrics to know what decisions to make next based on what's working and what's not, and where my dollar is better spent.
Right. It's so important. And you have a system with how you collect the rent. You have a system with how you measure your property to make sure it meets your standards.
Yes.
You have a system on how you gauge the real estate investor. You
Yes.
just, talked about it.
Yep, every little piece, a system for placing the tenants, a system for which properties we're going to take on, a system for acquiring properties,
Right.
a system for, rehabbing that property to a finished product, a system for dealing with the cities. There's a system for every aspect of real estate.
And that's what made you, it's made you so successful in what you do. And, Rob Syfert, I want to tell you, I appreciate that you joined us today. You gave, for new investors, you've given them quite a bit of information related to how to conduct their real estate investment business. And then for investors who are seasoned, you've given them reason for, why you need somebody in your position to, see, you provide the advice, you provide the management, you provide sales transaction, consultations, all those things that you do is the reason why you're successful, but more the reason why they need you, right?
Yes, I would agree with that.
I appreciate that you came in and joined us today. And if there's anything else, how about a phone number where somebody could reach you if they have a question, comment, or concern? Where can they reach you, Rob?
They can reach me at 586-580-4243.
Okay. Thanks, Rob. Anything else you want to add?
No, I think we've covered quite a broad range of things today. I appreciate you having me. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. So thanks again. Again, if you need to speak with Rob, you can also go on his website, which is USAPortfolioRE.com. And thanks for joining me, Dave Sobel, and with Proven Resource. You can reach me at 888-789-1715. And you can also give us a call. You can also reach me at dsobel@provenresource.com. And lastly, If you have a question, comment, concern, you want to give us some feedback, we really do appreciate it. My business is the business of law, real estate, finance, and asset planning, and this is really a courtesy of Proven Resource to give back to the community and give good information that's relevant and easy to use and implement. So thanks for joining us. Have a great day.